EasyWebinar is a webinar platform with some auto webinar and live streaming features. And this is my EasyWebinar review. Is it actually easy? Does it do webinars? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Shane Melaugh from ActiveGrowth.com. I've been reviewing webinar platforms like a madman lately, and now let's take a look at what EasyWebinar looks like from a user perspective. This is the dashboard we are greeted with when we start EasyWebinar, and let's create a new event to see what our options are. Right away, you get what you'd expect. You can create either a live event or an automated event. You name your event, give it a date, and go through all the settings. As you can see, the interface looks a bit outdated, kind of reminds me of Bootstrap 1.0. But for the most part, it's just not very nice to look at, but it is functional. I say for the most part because one thing that is a letdown here is the landing pages. Like several other webinar solutions, with EasyWebinar, you get the templates, registration page templates, replay page templates, thank you page templates, and so on that you would need to create a webinar funnel. But both the designs of those look strangely outdated and the customizability is very limited. So here you can see we have the template library where we basically only have these 4 choices. And any of these just look a bit 2009-ish. So that's one thing, they just look outdated. I'm going to select one that's, maybe one of the least kind of offensive ones design-wise. But then the other problem is that the actual customizability of these is also very limited. So if we go to registration page here, as you can see, what I can do is I can enter only in these fields. I can enter a title, a subtitle, I can upload an image, I can change the text, but I can't actually see what these changes will look like on the actual template. So we have an example of blind editing here. I have to go and make changes, then check the preview to see what it looks like and go and make changes again. And also it's just pretty limited because all I have is a couple of fields to fill out and an image to upload. It limits me in what I can do to make this page look good or make it match my brand. When we go into the theme customization tab here, we also see some very archaic looking tech, right? I can upload a logo. I have to define the height in pixels. I have a couple of fields to fill out and then some custom CSS. I can add custom CSS for further customization, but really this is far from a good solution for creating these templates I need. Bizarrely, the customization for the kind of weighting screen is under advanced options, and in a similar way as we've seen before, very limited options plus a bit of custom CSS to define what people see before an event starts. When we've created an event, we can go to publishing options to see all the links we need, which is handy all in one place. And it also comes with its own built-in one-click email link registration, also a nice feature. And here's also where we can get buttons or widgets to embed in our own landing pages. And this is probably what you'll want to do. You'd want to use your own landing page template so you have something more customizable and better looking. But even here, I found these a bit finicky to work with. I had issues where I tried to change the button color and it didn't save. And when I embedded this button on my page, it was always left aligned. I couldn't get it right aligned or center aligned unless, again, I go in and add custom CSS. So the whole thing is just, it doesn't feel modern. It doesn't feel like the kind of thing we're now used to from editing landing pages and pages if you're using a page builder like, for example, Thrive Architect. Now let's see what the webinar room itself looks like, and we can start by clicking on Go Live. We can use EasyWebinar to do a live stream on YouTube or do an actual webinar, not a live stream, by clicking Enter Live Room. Then we get a quick check for webcam and microphone and so on, which is good. Then we click on Go Live and there's a quick waiting period. And then I'm once again prompted to join the room. And then strangely, I'm shown a countdown, or basically says going live in. And then I am put straight into the room. And this is a bit strange because first of all, there's no explicit testing option. You can't do a test run. But also it implies that, oh, we're live right away. Broadcast has started. People are pouring in, things are happening, but that's actually not quite right. So by default, it will share my microphone right away. So participants coming in will hear me right away. And I can mute this and do some of my preparation, which is what you usually get in a webinar solution. You get to prepare your room first, and then you open it up to attendees. Here, it just starts right away. And even if I start doing my screen sharing and so on, participants will see that right away. So this is a bit strange that I'm basically just thrown in here without a chance to prepare. It's the only solution I've tried that is like that doesn't let me kind of set myself up and then invite the attendees. Now, as usual, I'm going to use my other screen with the other browser to pretend that I'm an attendee so we can see the admin and attendee view at the same time. Here I'm prompted to register or log in, and then I can join the event. And then I'm prompted again to enter the room. I don't know why there's an extra step here, but there we go. And then I am entered in the room. We have a similar view for both attendee and admin, just with more options for the admin, which I think is generally helpful. It's generally good if the attendee doesn't see something totally different than me as the host, because that makes it more predictable, gives me a better idea of what I'm presenting and what people are seeing. Now, let me start sharing my camera and things like that so that we get a better idea of what this looks like. So here's what we would see during a typical webinar presentation. I'm sharing my screen, which could be a website or slides. I'm sharing my webcam. There is some chat going on, and we can see that when I reply or create a chat message as the host, it is highlighted and it stands out from other messages. And then we have a couple of other options. If we go to presentation options in the admin view, we can share our screen, we can share slides if we've uploaded the presentation, or we can share a video during the webinar. Those are our basic options, and we can present an offer. So let's have a look at what that looks like. I can create offers, and I can have buttons, text, and links, as well as a countdown, which is optional. I have an offer here with basically all the features active, and when I click on broadcast, it will appear for my attendees above the chat window. This is a good marketing feature. It's pretty attention grabbing. It's good that you can also add a countdown, so you can really use scarcity marketing on a live event. This is the best marketing and interaction feature in EasyWebinar, because everything else here feels a bit thin compared to other webinar solutions. What surprised me the most, what is missing, is a polling feature. There is no way to display an interactive poll during a webinar. And this surprised me because on the website, they advertise this as a feature. It says, poll your audience. So I was like, where is the polling feature? Well, the small print here is that it says, view specific attendees from your event and see all the chat messages they sent during the webinar. EasyWebinar, that's not the same thing as a poll, and you know it. So it basically seems like they want to advertise polling because other webinar solutions have that, but they didn't bother to build a polling feature. That's a bit of a low blow. And in general, it's just, we don't have a questions and answer feature, we don't have a polling or survey feature, and we have the offer feature, but it's fairly limited. And the chat, not only do we not have a separate chat or questions and answer feature so that as the host of the webinar, I can find out which questions I should answer and kind of separate them from the noise in the chat. To add insult to injury, when you're trying to go through the chat and answer questions, every time someone adds a new message, the view jumps all the way down to the new message. So if you're scrolling through the chat messages and you start reading one of the questions, it just keeps jumping down because someone typed something new. So the way the chat works is really hostile to you as a host if you're trying to interact with people and answer their questions. Also, while I'm complaining about things that are missing, what's also conspicuously absent is any kind of whiteboard or annotation feature, which is something we've seen in several of the other solutions. So that's what I mean when I say that, we have a bunch of features here, but for the most part, it's just kind of sparse. There's just not a lot in terms of engagement or marketing features in this room. Also, it's worth noting that, first of all, recording is not on by default. You have to flip that on to make sure you get a recording or a replay of your event. And another strange thing is there's this HD button, which you have to click, and then it asks you, warning, do you really want to stream in HD, which by the way is 720p. We're not talking about full HD 1080, right? And you say, okay, yes, please start streaming in higher quality. And then it starts doing that. This is a bad sign, because what the webinar platform should do is it should intake your signal in the highest possible quality and then distribute that signal depending on the visitor's bandwidth. It should be streaming lower resolutions or higher compression to people on a slower connection, and higher resolution, better quality to people on a fast connection. It shouldn't leave that choice up to me to say, oh, okay, let's switch to HD, and then maybe cause a problem for people who are on a slow connection. When it comes to the replay you get with EasyWebinar, this is what the default replay room looks like, where we have a question box so that people can still interact, or at least send you questions that you can answer later. Bizarrely, it shows us an attendee count on a replay, which is usually going to be 0 or very low. So that's strange. And it shows us this replay as a video, and the quality here is, well, basically it's not great, right? It's up to 720p. But at least it was stable, so I didn't have any problems throughout the live event or the replay. So this is a usable replay. But if you want to have kind of the marketing features and things like that, even though there's not that many, you would have to, instead of providing a replay, create an auto webinar using your replay file, which you can do. So if you are doing a sales webinar, you're probably better off, instead of sending out a replay, creating an auto webinar based on your live webinar and sending people to that. So let's look at the pricing of EasyWebinar. It starts at $78 per month for a room with 100 seats. And that is a pretty good price. It is not particularly expensive. It's also not particularly cheap, but it's a decent price. For a 500 seat room, it is $129 a month, or if you pay annually, it's just about $1,000 per year for 500 seats. And that is actually a pretty good price. So that would make this a really good deal if you were doing webinars to a large audience and you wanted some auto webinar features, except that the actual webinar features just aren't that great. In conclusion, EasyWebinar is simply the most lukewarm and unexciting solution that I've tested so far. You know, the only thing that's really bad about it that I can really complain about is the landing pages. It is just oddly outdated landing page design, poor customization options. It's just not great. And then the options for integrating with a different landing page solutions also aren't great. That's the only thing where I really feel like that's not well done. Everything else that I was complaining about is generally like not really that bad, or I'm complaining about a lack of features that also don't exist in a platform like GoToWebinar, which I've used for years. So it's not that EasyWebinar is somehow terrible, and it did work. Unlike some other platforms I tested, I didn't have any technical issues. I didn't lose half of my attendees because, screen sharing didn't work or the video quality was horrible or anything like that. Again, it's not bad, but it's just not great. It's just not exciting. EasyWebinar is a better webinar solution with more features and at a better price than GoToWebinar. But if we compare it to some other marketing-focused webinar platforms, it just can't keep up. There isn't feature parity there. So there it is. EasyWebinar is not bad, but I cannot recommend it. Now, if you're wondering, well, what is the best webinar platform? That's what I've been working on finding out. And as soon as I've tested all of the platforms, I'm going to do a big comparison and roundup review. And when that's done, I will link to it below this video in the description and in the post that goes with it. So check below to see if that's already done, so we can finally find out which is the best webinar solution.